testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just a sucker for listening to something that isn't true and having to make comments about it. It's just who I am, and I'm going to do it this morning, and I'm going to veer off a little bit from the reconciliation because I heard Ms. Scanlon talk about tax cuts for the rich. Washington Post gave Democrats 4 Pinocchios on that tired rhetoric that is just completely and utterly false. The new filings were analyzed recently, and 70% of the new tax cuts went to low and middle class families. So if she's talking about the people that make an earning on tips as rich people, or people making a living off of their overtime that got a tax break, or the doubled standard deduction, which, Mr. Chairman, 92% of all Americans take, I don't think those folks are rich people. But they're going to keep recycling this rhetoric, but it won't land because people have more money in their pockets. By the way, wages have gone up $3,000, and that is about as much as it went down during the Biden administration. It's just policies have consequences. So, and yes, Ms. Ranking Member Scanlon, this is an all-Republican exercise, as was making sure we didn't put a 22% tax hike on working families. That's how much the tax hike would have been had we allowed the tax cuts to expire. You all weren't willing to do it. We were, and Americans are better off. The economy's growing, business investments up, and again, more refunds, less withholdings, more money in people's pockets. Now, look, I can talk about this issue, Madam Chair, in the context of we had a deal with Democrats. Democrats reneged on funding the government. They had the longest shutdown ever, second to only the shutdown prior to this, over a COVID-era fraud-ridden tax or subsidy expansion. So this was 76 days that the American people had to have a Homeland Security service and apparatus go dark. We didn't have our Coast Guardsmen to defend our ports against terrorist attacks. We couldn't enforce immigration laws and protect our border from drugs and people being trafficked into this country. We didn't have CISA agents being able to man their posts so that our critical infrastructure wasn't hacked. We can say that this is Republicans' attempt to make good on our good faith negotiation the first time, and to make sure that our brave law enforcement have the tools they need to do the job that Joe Biden and the Democrats, when they had total control of this town, absolutely didn't do. They they abdicated the first and most important job of the federal government, which is to provide for the common defense. They didn't secure our border, they didn't enforce our laws, and we had record deluge of drugs, people, crime, gangs, people on the terrorist watch list, people from countries of interest, record, and it was destroying the fabric of this country, and it was putting at great risk every neighborhood and every community and every city and state in this nation. And this president, Donald J. Trump, was elected, every swing state popular and electoral vote, to clean up this mess. And what's happened is you have rogue cities and states that refuse to work with our law enforcement to actually enforce the law. They would rather break the law and harbor people who have broken the law to come to this country rather than work to identify the most hardened criminals so that we can deport them and we can get back to rule of law, regular order, peace, tranquility, the things that the American people expect us to do up here for them, of all parties, across the board. So, yes, you're right. It is an all-Republican exercise because I can't find a Democrat that would stave off a 22% tax hike, and I can't find one that's willing to enforce the law as it relates to immigration, secure the border, and actually take the criminal elements that have come into this country, like the people who came into this country illegally by the millions, and actually rid our great country of those threats. I can't find it. If we could, we wouldn't be here. And all you have to do is listen to all the litany of statements that have been made. Governor Tim Walz says ICE officers are a threat to the public. Modern-day Gestapo. Governor Pritzker says that ICE is turning the country into Nazi Germany. And there are the reign of terror. John Hickenlooper Chuck Schumer said ICE doesn't belong in our neighborhoods. I mean, think about the incendiary rhetoric. Think about the seeds that have been sown of obstruction and resistance that have made it nearly impossible to do the job of cleaning up the streets of our cities because of what's happened over the last 4 years under the Biden administration and Democrat control. So it's been impossible, and we're working better together because we're talking and coordinating, and that's what Texas does. That's what Florida and other states. We never had any of the problems of Minnesota. But I think it's reckless and irresponsible, and it's insulting to have these labels attached to our brave men and women who risk their lives to enforce the laws. We're going to give them the resources they need, and listen, what we're also going to do is do it for 3 years so that Democrats can't use them as leverage, Homeland Security as leverage, and the American people's security as leverage in a shutdown again. And I rest my case, and I yield back what may be remaining of my time. Thanks for your indulgence, Madam Chair.